Welcome back to the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. That is Gonzo. That is Zan. I am Shub. And today we are here to do Week 8 recap. Let's go. Another great week of college football is in the books, boys. And it was the week of top teams struggling. And I mean struggling. There's a lot that went on. A lot of top teams scathed by. Some of them with the helps of some officiating, some without. But all in all, it was a pretty pivotal week. And I think we learned a lot about these teams, especially some big teams at the top that are competing for national championships and conference championships. Well, gentlemen, let's start off today by going to the horseshoe. Penn State versus Ohio State. This was the game of the week, big noon kickoff. And if you're a big fan of defense and defensive back play, I think you really enjoyed this one. But if you're a fan of offense, you did not like what you saw when you watched this game. It was a struggle bus for both offenses respectively in this game. But at the end of the day, Ohio State was able to edge out the Nittany Lions 20-12 at home. Penn State, James Franklin still have yet to win the big one. That narrative keeps on rolling. Penn State fans definitely are just numb to it at this point. Ohio State very much still alive for the Big Ten championship race and the national championship race. Guys, what are your takeaways from this game?
I got eyes on this game, and quite frankly, Penn State just couldn't get anything going. Drew Aller was held in check, felt really uncomfortable all game. Ohio State did a great job limiting big plays and forcing them to methodically move the ball and forcing Aller to be great, which he was not. So early in that game, you could tell unless something happened, unless some significant adjustments were made coming out of halftime, Ohio State was going to come out on top, whether it be a low-scoring game or not. But I will say, I mean, Penn State, man, they're so quality, but they can just never win these big games. They still have another shot to redeem themselves against Michigan, but this is why Penn State is, the Big Ten is a 3-team race, but like it's 1A, and there's 2 teams at the 1A, and then they're the 1B. I would even put them at the 2 because they can never beat those guys. But yeah, guys, unfortunate for Penn State, but I think we all kind of saw this coming. So,
alluding to what Zan just said, Penn State seems to be the OG Clemson of the Big Ten. They get all these big moments, and then they Penn State. Clemsoning, since they've been successful, you can't really use that anymore. But it's as simple as this. Aller just could not get it together, and that's credit to Jim Knowles and that defense. It did a phenomenal job was shutting down this Nittany Lion offense. And then, Marvin Harrison cementing himself as the first wide receiver to go in this draft, most likely with 11 catches, a touchdown, 160 yards. Just a great win for the Buckeyes. They needed this one. I think in terms of win totals, Penn State could still win double digits, but it's getting to a point kind of like Georgia and the Mark Richt years. It's like, okay, like are we done going 10-2? When can we take that next step? And there was a lot of hope for this Penn State team. We were included in those kind of talking points and conversations, and they'll get one more chance against Michigan. But I mean, do we really think that even at home, Penn State will play any better against Michigan than Ohio State, who right now is viewed as the, I guess, less formidable of those two? So, but I think the big takeaway should be Ohio State still well and alive, and it's most likely going to be 11-0 coming down to that matchup in Ann Arbor.
It's a shame that Penn State can't win these games because that defense is legit, guys. Like, there was a defense to take down and shut down this Ohio State receiving core. And it was really weird because you just mentioned Marvin Harrison's stat line, and it's like, well, it still felt like Ohio State's offense and their receivers were sort of bottled up on the whole. And just watching this game, it looked like Penn State's DBs were really able to shut down and get back on those routes and cover those receivers. I was very impressed by Penn State's defense. You held a team like Ohio State to 20 points in a vacuum. That's very good. But like you said, man, it was the offense. So that does beg the question, like you alluded to, Gonzo. Penn State's at home versus Michigan. The nice part about these 3 teams, these big 3 kahunas playing each other in the Big Ten East, is that they're all a 1-1 split, home and away. After what you saw from Penn State, Can they beat Michigan at home? Because that's the only way that they can get back to the Big Ten championship game is if they beat Michigan at home, hope that Michigan then would beat Ohio State, and then just kind of pray whatever tiebreaker the Big Ten has goes in your favor. Can they do that?
Can Penn State beat Michigan at home? It depends on Drew Aller, man. That defense is for real. Michigan's offense, I'm not really that impressed with their offense. Look, I know they're putting up crazy points, but they haven't played anybody. Michigan only has one opponent on their schedule that they have played to this date that is over 500, and that's Rutgers. So Michigan's best opponent was Rutgers. So when they actually go and play a good team on the road, I think there's a chance that Penn State, albeit having a rather 20-12, it was closer than it looks. They were handedly beat by Ohio State. But I think if they can just figure out something on the offense, their defense is going to keep them in that game, and they can potentially snipe Michigan. They're at home, and I think that's why they have a shot.
I think it fundamentally comes down to if Michigan has their signs or not, and that will be the determining factor. On all joking aside, I mean, no, if it's a night game over there in Happy Valley, very intimidating. Like we said, that highlight of the timeout that was against Michigan, so they absolutely can. They've got the talent to do it. It's just going to come down, can Aller make the plays he needs to do its part every week for this team.
Well said.
I don't think signs are going to turn the light switch on and off of Penn State's offense with Drew Aller. It's something that needs to be night and day. It's a switch that needs to turn on. The passing game and the timing, just not there. And frankly, against Michigan, that defense is just as good as Ohio State's. I don't know if they can beat Michigan right now as it stands, but we shall see. At least we'll get that game in a few weeks here. So as far as Ohio State, guys, what are your takeaways from the Buckeyes? How do you feel about them against Michigan? This is basically, these two teams was basically, how will they do against Michigan? That's the parameter, because that's ultimately what's going to decide the division. They got to go at Michigan.
I feel Ohio State, Michigan, that decides who's going to win the Big Ten and who's going to the playoffs. That's how I feel about it.
That whole blowout last year really threw things out of whack for me, because every year I can believe Ohio State will beat Michigan and it'll happen. But now this new look Michigan team has just been a buzzsaw against their arch rivals. That being said, I think Marvin Harrison will get his, and I still think Ohio State could beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. I think they need a lot of things to go right, but I don't think they'd get embarrassed like they did at home last year.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Pac-12, boys. There is a lot we need to talk about here between Utah and USC. Now, if you're able to watch this game, kudos to you, because this was a great game. I was able to watch this one live, especially the second half. Phenomenal game, phenomenal ending. This is why we love college football, is because of games like this. And these are probably the last two times that these two teams are going to play each other for a while, unless they play in the postseason, of course, when they go to their respective conferences next year. But the storyline here is that Utah kind of owns USC, boys, and Lincoln Riley just cannot beat the physical teams. And Utah, with Mr. Bryson Barnes at quarterback, who is essentially their third string, though Kyle Whittingham did officially announce that Brent Keithy and Cam Rising are done for the rest of the year. So I don't know if you want to call them their third string, but because Rising never really played this whole year. So whatever, however you want to put it, Utah was able to get it done on the road in the Coliseum. Caleb Williams, not necessarily the greatest game, though. Granted, Utah does have a great defense, and Utah iced it away with that game-winning field goal at the very end as time expired. Boys, what are your takeaways from this, and what does this mean for USC the rest of the year? Because I think this is a problem.
So I have a takeaway here. How does Alex Grinch still have a job? You ever recall Alex Grinch at OU? You ever recall Alex Grinch at USC? You ever recall how that was like OU's worst defenses, like in a long time under Alex Grinch? How USC, despite having 4 or 5 stars on their defense, still and a bunch of portal talent, still can't play a lick of defense. to save their life. If you're Alex Grinch, what kind of lap dances are you giving to Lincoln Riley? Because he loves you. No matter how bad you coordinate your defense, Lincoln Riley won't get rid of you. And it's quite amazing to me. And that's what's holding back USC. It's their defense. If they just even had an average defense, USC becomes a much different beast to handle. But hey, I think they're very much eliminated from the Pac-12 play. And we will see, because Washington and Oregon both look very strong right now.
Well, the issue
for Washington.
Well, I will say this. USC only has one Pac-12 loss. So, yeah, everyone keeps talking about, oh, yeah, they're out of the playoffs now. Yeah, what is Caleb Williams going to do? Is he going to quit the rest of the year? Because that Notre Dame loss obviously wasn't a conference loss. They still have one conference loss. They have the same amount of conference losses as Oregon, as Utah, as UCLA.
They'll have another one by the end of the year.
And yes, that's a different discussion. They will have another one. They'll probably have multiple, if I'm going to be honest, if you look at the rest of their schedule. But as of right now, they still are very much like they control their own destiny to get to the Pac-12 championship game, I think. So for USC, it's like, can you get that team motivated to play their best the rest of the season for a Pac-12 championship appearance versus a playoff appearance, which probably is not going to happen?
I don't know, Shub. Their stadium's going to go from 70% capacity to 50 now.
This reminds me of when Oregon a few years back fell out of the Rose Bowl ahead of the Rose Bowl Mall. And I remember one of the players being like, man, we don't care about the Rose Bowl, yada, yada. And they go on to lose and went to the Alamo Bowl, and they got absolutely clowned. And I really do think you will see some quit from USC. I mean, you lose to Utah 3 straight times. This is a team that has been rock fighting its way, that their star quarterback is done, is not playing. And they come in your house and beat you after that incredible regular season game last year where Whittingham went for 2 and shut down Caleb Williams on the comeback drive. And then they knocked you out of the playoff in the Pac-12 championship that same season. So I think the sirens are going up in USC. I do think this is a mercenary situation where it's a team that brought in a lot of transfers. They won't give an absolute rip about USC. It's when can I make my next NIL dollar? I truly do believe that. And I think it's more of a testament to Utah, a team that just, literally the national media wants to ignore. It's boring. It's defense. Who cares? And they got a heck of a win. And honestly, they could end up in the Pac-12 championship again. And they don't have the flash of Washington and Oregon, but Utah's just all reliable. She keeps doing her thing, and she'll be there for you at the end.
Utah does this every single year, guys. It without fail. There's an early season loss. We always forget about them. We start talking about all these other Pac-12 contenders. We start talking about the USCs, all the flashy teams, and then Utah just comes up end of the season playing their best ball. They beat those teams, and then they win Pac-12 championships, and they go to the Rose Bowl. It's what they do every single year. And we keep talking about, now we're talking about a Washington-Oregon rematch now that USC is very likely going to be out of the picture.
Utah's sneaky.
Utah's still in the mix, guys. And because the Pac-12 is so good this year, I still wouldn't write off Oregon State just yet either. Oregon State's still a thorn in the side that they still have to play both Washington and Oregon. And hell, USC still got to play Washington and Oregon. And, if we saw from Washington, like, is that team going to go undefeated? I don't know, but we'll get to that later. Yeah, I think Utah definitely deserves some huge credit here just for doing what they do, for being Utah. And it's honestly incredible. And let me ask you this. I heard someone say on the broadcast, is Utah going to be the favorites to win the Big 12 going into next year? No, yes. I know we want to talk about this year, but next year, is Utah the odds-on favorite to win the Big 12? Is it too early to say that?
I don't think it's close.
Not even close, really?
No. I think Utah, their win total is probably going to be like 10.5 coming out of next year. It's going to be crazy.
Man, I don't know if it's that. I don't know if they're like
9.5, 9.5. I bet they'll get 9.5 or 10.
Yeah, but they'll probably be one of the favorites to win the Big 12 next year. But yeah, guys, I I'm definitely worried about USC. And remember my bold prediction? Remember my bold prediction about Lincoln Riley?
Well, that Lincoln Riley was going to leave.
Listen, man, all I'm saying is that, like, Caleb Williams is, like, we don't know. You guys saw Caleb Williams on the sideline yesterday. Were you watching the end of that game? Caleb Williams was like all alone on the sideline after the game, and he just looked like he was like a deer in headlights. Like, he looked like he was like contemplating his entire future.
Well, right now he's trying to figure out what kind of stake he can get in the NFL team that drafts him. He's checked out.
Are they on quit alert for the rest of the year?
I think
Because
so.
I feel
think
like they
so,
might be.
personally.
Even though
This season quit alert.
mathematically they still are like in the hunt for the Pac-12 championship. They only have one conference loss. Mentally, this team's probably going to be checked out.
Caleb Williams doesn't care, man. Caleb Williams is looking at the paycheck that he's going to get come the May or April.
It's unfortunate, man. I hate to see it go out that way, but you know, it goes back to your point about Alex Grinch, man. We're going to look back at this little Caleb Williams stint at USC, and we're going to say defense is the reason that this team was held back and they wasted like a generational quarterback. But then again, you know, that's nothing new when talking about Lincoln Riley teams. So, oh boy, OU fans definitely are smoking that Lincoln Riley pack this year right now. So let's head on over to the ACC, boys. Duke versus Florida State. This was a big game in terms of ACC championship aspirations. Florida State remains undefeated, and this was a pretty competitive game up until the very end, I would say. Duke did end up playing Riley Leonard despite some outlets saying that he wasn't going to play, which, you know, I was like, come on, guys, giving out fake information here. But Riley Leonard did play. And guys, I did not see Riley Leonard being 100% in this. I think it was pretty obvious that he wasn't 100%, and that's why he didn't play well. I mean, the dude is known for being a dual threat quarterback, and Duke is at its best when Riley Leonard can run the ball. And he wasn't able to do that very well. So Duke thus didn't do so well offensively. Florida State, though, they credit to them, man. They got out to a deficit early on, and they hung in there, and they basically dominated the whole second half and just sort of milked this one out, and they're still undefeated, man. That dream season in FSU is very much alive. What are your takeaways from this?
Well, before Riley Leonard went out, Duke was winning this game, and they were about to score, actually. Duke was on like the FSU 5-yard line or whatever with a 20-17 lead. Riley Leonard goes down, and instead of kicking the field goal, despite Leonard going down, they bring out the Duke of Yorkshire to go for it on 4th down, Mr. Belfort. And of course, they don't convert, which I thought was insanely stupid because the defense was playing really well up to that point. Your points were very hard to come by, and your star quarterback is now out. Take the points, dude. And then, of course, they get stuffed. FSU drives 90-something yards down the field, scores, and they never looked back from there. I mean, once Riley Leonard went out, you could just tell the defense gave up. They were demoralized. They're like, we have no chance of winning this game. No chance of winning this game. And that's basically how it played out. FSU marched it down their throat from then on out, ever since Riley Leonard left the game. It was a complete backbreaker for the morale of the Duke faithful. And I think if Riley Leonard never gets hurt, even in limited capacity that he was in, it's a much different game. FSU probably still wins, but it's not easily like it was at the end.
I have a question. Do you think Duke should have even played Riley Leonard in this game at all? Because
They should not have.
I think they should have.
So from what we've seen, I don't know, because I look at Duke's schedule. Listen, your goal is to play for an ACC championship. You don't necessarily have to go undefeated. Florida State is probably most likely going to be the one team that's like the 1 seed in the ACC championship that's undefeated in conference play. There's 2 teams that play in that championship game. If Duke wants a rematch versus Florida State, I kind of would have sold against Florida State in this game. I would have said, here, like, you can beat us this week with, you know, the Duke of Yorkshire, Henry Balin IV. And that's fine. We'll see you guys in Charlotte for the ACC championship game, because you know who they have next? Duke's got to play Louisville next. They still got to play North Carolina. Louisville and North Carolina both have a conference loss. Those games are going to be way more pivotal in terms of Duke getting those head-to-head tiebreakers necessary in order to get to the ACC championship game. Hell, that Louisville, that game is this week. We're going to pick it. I think Riley Leonard should have not played in this game. They should have just said, screw it, we're going to take the L versus FSU, go on, have fun, be undefeated. and we're going to put our full effort and energy into getting those head-to-head wins versus Louisville and UNC, because ultimately those games are going to decide Duke's season way more than this Florida State game. And now that Leonard did play and had to be removed from this game, I'm like, well, this could have been an extra week of rest that he would have had to get 100% for Louisville. Is he going to be 100% for Louisville? It doesn't look like it to me. And that's a problem for Duke.
He's probably going to be out for a few weeks.
I think they may have shot themselves in the foot here, in the high ankle. They may have sprained themselves in the high ankle, pun intended there.
Yeah, I think more so Mike Elko is not one to lay down, and him going for it on fourth down when they were up 2017, even without their starting quarterback, just tells me that he's not one to back down regardless of whatever the case may be. And that's why, you know what, I don't have any issue with them starting Riley Leonard. Look, I know that in hindsight, obviously it could come back to bite them, but you're trying to go make a statement. You're trying to go into Tallahassee. You're trying to beat FSU. You're trying to announce to the ACC and the national media that we are here. My program is here. Look what I've built. In hindsight, of course, you don't expect Riley Leonard to get even more beat up, but because of that, it's easy to say probably shouldn't have played him. But I'm all for trying to beat FSU, and your best chance of doing it is with your starting quarterback.
Dude, I agree with you, buddy. And unfortunately, with the new 12 team playoff system, you might see this more. But to me, it just made sense. Rest your guy, take the loss. The ACC is cannibalizing itself, which we went on to find that out later that night. But as long as they take care of business, you get FSU as the team who lost the first matchup. It's a good position to be in with any. Should have rested Riley and basically, as you said, sold against FSU. they got the big win against Clemson already, you know, and then you almost beat Notre Dame. I appreciate them wanting to keep the Gonzo 10-2, you know, dream alive. But like, yeah, they legitimately could be that number 2 team in there for the ACC title game.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Man,
I totally
get
get
with you in mind. They said we got to do this for Gonzo. Get in there, Riley.
Yeah, I totally get it. But at the end of the day, those Louisville and UNC games are going to be way more impactful in terms of strategically getting to the ACC championship than this FSU game would. So, as far as FSU,
UNC showed us, maybe you can just start anybody and you'll win the game.
Seriously, UNC
boy.
lost to UVA.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that here in a little bit, but that I have something to say about that. Listen, that's all I'm gonna say. But real quick, Florida State. Look at the rest of their schedule. Is Florida State on track to go undefeated, boys? Can they do it? If you look at the rest of their schedule, I think they're pretty much a lock for the ACC championship game. They got at Wake Forest, at Pitt, then Miami. That's it. Then they're done with ACC play. They don't have a loss in conference play. They're the only ACC team that doesn't have a conference loss, so they are sitting pretty. Then they end the game with 2 non-cons. North Alabama, then at Florida. Do you see a loss in there?
No.
Miami's the only shot.
But maybe Florida can keep it kind of interesting, but I just think they just outpower them in games. So
I see a loss in there, boys. They're going to finish 11-1. And I would put my money on it. I do not think this team is – I think this team is good. I don't think this team is elite. And I think they will stumble to somebody. Whether it's Miami or Florida or – hell, I don't know, man. UNC just lost to Virginia. So I wouldn't write off like them losing the pick or Wake Forest, even though that's a highly unlikely. But I think they're going to stumble. Even the good teams have bad games. And we saw that a lot last week. I think they're going to be 11-1. I don't think anybody is going undefeated this year besides maybe Georgia. I don't think a single team is going to finish undefeated, and that's Florida State included. I think it's that type of year, which makes it more fun. SEC, the third Saturday in October, the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Tennessee Volunteers. A huge revenge game for Alabama was in store here, and we all picked Alabama to win this game. On the spread, you guys were like, we like Alabama to cover those 9 points. But then Mr. Me over here, Mr. Shub, was like, nah, I think Tennessee can keep it close. Well,
I mean, you were right, but just didn't get the right outcome.
You know, it's I went 1-9 in spreads this week for those of you who don't know. And this is the second time in 3 weeks I've gone 1-9 on spreads, which is like, I don't even know what to say. I'm
Hey,
I'm
win
clearly
I won't lie. I won't
Doing-
lie. I was smiling a little bit just because I know how much you care about your spread record.
Hey,
Yeah.
5-2 in win totals. Win totals matter.
I'm off to a good
Yeah.
start in win totals at least. Win
That
totals
is good. That
ultimately,
is good. You have the best win totals record.
I'll take that over spreads. But man, anyways, Tennessee, that's all I got to say. It's just, how did you not cover this game? It's the same thing with Maryland versus Ohio State a few weeks ago. Like, how on God's green earth did Tennessee not cover this game? And we all know why. It's because there was a scoop and score on a fumble in the second half late in the game. But still, though, my takeaways from this game in all seriousness, Tennessee got off to a hot start, which I kind of expected. I thought Tennessee's defense would play a little bit better than it did, especially in the second half. Guys, Bama took a lot of heat for like having kind of a mediocre coaching staff this year, especially at the beginning of the year. But when I look at Alabama's defense, in the second half, Bama's defense shuts teams down, and they shut Tennessee down. Did Tennessee score a single point in the second half?
Nope.
They did not.
It was 20-7 at halftime. Bama won 34-20.
Yes, I'm pretty sure Bama won on a 27-0 run to end the game.
They did.
And
That's why I was contemplating giving Tennessee a Zanny bar. Honestly, I was contemplating it because how do you have a 20-7 lead? And yeah, I know it's on the road. I know it's in a hostile environment, but then you lose 34-20. You don't put up another point, not so much as a field goal, no curmudgeon of anything. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was told that veer and shoot is unstoppable. It's a cheat code. Yeah, if you have Hendon Hooker, maybe. Man, I really bought that Kool-Aid that Joe Milton was going to be worth anything because he shredded a Clemson team that didn't really care to be in the Orange Bowl last year. And man, I've always been dunking on Milrow, calling him mid-row, but man, he gets the tip of the cap for me. It's, if anything, it's mid-tin because Joe Milton has just okay, he can throw the ball far, sick. I don't know. Honestly, you should just throw Nico in there now and just see what happens. Unless you're going to stun his growth or something. But at this point, can he be any worse as an 18-year-old kid? Who's a 5-star, all his upside than Milton, who's kind of shown you who he is at this point. But the Bama angle, this is a good revenge bounce back from them, and now they get to rest up on a nice little win streak as the Tigers come into town. So that's going to be a good one as always.
Yeah, but I think Milton actually played kind of well in this game, all things considered, especially in the first half. I thought Milton was playing well. I texted you guys in our chat. It was like Milton was having his quote unquote on game. He looked pretty good, but obviously Tennessee couldn't get it done. But I reiterate what you said about Milrow, man. Say what you want about Alabama. Milrow was getting it done for them, especially the defense. The defense is really what's getting it done for them. But
Milrow seems to be getting a little bit better each week.
He is. And
yes,
let me ask you guys this. Alabama's now 7-1. They're undefeated in SEC play at 5-0. They're the only West team that doesn't have a conference loss, though they still have to play LSU, who could theoretically still beat them out for the division. But other than LSU, there's no other team that can realistically beat out Alabama.
I think Bama's going to win the West. I know that we were kind of way against that, and we were kind of leaning a 10.5 under easily based on the QB situation. I think they're going to go 11-1 and win the West. Their defense is too good, and Milrow is playing better each week.
Gonzo, I know that game's in 2 weeks, but be honest. What do you think is going to happen there? Do you think LSU can actually beat Alabama? Because yes. I actually do think they
can beat them. They can beat them. Will they beat them?
They can throw on them. I think LSU. I think they definitely can score 30. I think 40 might be a maybe. The defense has improved, but shutting out doesn't improve. But shutting them out shows less than I guess allowing points would have, if that made sense. It's you're supposed to shut out Army, but they give 17 Army. They'd be like, what the heck's going on? So I think, let me put it this way. Since I've been out here in 2017 and probably going back to, when Les Miles was here, I would say the fan base, this is probably the most optimistic you can be going into Tuscaloosa since the Joe Burrow team. I don't think it's an automatic loss like it's felt.
Oh, no, definitely not an automatic loss. But if I had to pick either side right now, I think I'd pick Bama.
That's completely
As of right
fair
now,
and
could
very
be
realistic.
subject to change in a week. I'm not saying LSU doesn't have a chance in that game because they definitely do. That is the biggest threat to Bama on the schedule. And for me, the sake of money that I have personally placed, I would like LSU to win that game because I have a ticket on Alabama under 10.5. So I would very much be a LSU Tiger fan when they play Alabama.
Well, I mean, that's the last shot because like they're gonna boat race Kentucky, Chattanooga. Enough said. And then unless Auburn pulls out some magic and they have
Which
looked
you never know in the
terrible,
Iron Bowl. They
they
could.
have just looked so terrible.
You never know with the
Um,
Iron Bowl.
I mean, this is it for a lot of things. Like for a lot of things on November 4th, y'all.
I'm going to repeat myself. I said I see a loss for Florida State in the next few weeks. I see a loss for Alabama in the next few weeks. It may not be to LSU, even though LSU, I do think, is the one team that has the prototype to beat Alabama for all the reasons you guys said. But I think there's a loss still in there, boys. And I'm not saying that because I also have a financial stake in that as well, along with Zan. But I legitimately do
Chattanooga's a
think
good
there's still a
SoCon
loss.
team.
I come away from these games thinking like I don't think Alabama's indestructible. And but we shall see. The defense in the second half really just keeps making me want to be like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe this team is actually really good and I'm just refusing to believe it. But we shall see. We shall see. Next up on the docket, boys, let's go into the Big 12. What a great representation of the Power Five. We did a Big 10 game, a Pac-12 game, an ACC game, an SEC game. Now we're going to the Big 12. This is the perfect perfect order here. UCF versus Oklahoma. Now, personally, I was very invested in this game because I took UCF plus 17.5 on the spread with personal money. I just thought this was a really good opportunity for a team like UCF, who's probably a little bit better than what people think they are. They got John Reese Plumlee back for this game. And yeah, I did think that OU and Texas coming off the Red River in a bye week, think they'd be a little sleepy. And I really like that bet, and I'm glad it paid off. I mean, hell, UCF almost won the game. And Zan, I know you have, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I'll get into it a little bit later because I do have a bone to pick with this game in particular and another game in the Big 12. But the officials won OU this game. They did. The Dylan Gabriel Bowl should have been won by UCF. And I'll talk more about it why when we get into our award shows at the end of this segment. But ultimately, it's just I hate seeing the favored team win because of questionable officiating when the underdog arguably played a little bit better, especially in the first half. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna spoil anything else because I will talk about this game one more time. So
I think it's a good win for OU in a potential trap situation. Serious kudos to UCF. I mean, your first year in Power Five ball against a blue blood. I mean, you come 2 points away from winning. UCF, I said this in win totals. I didn't think that they'd win over 7, which is looking very likely, but I still think it's a team that A, could make a bowl game, and B, will be good once a few years in Power Five have passed for them. As for OU, I mean, you take them how you can get them. That 11 a.m. time slot against a newcomer in the conference, not ideal, especially coming off of the hangover of beating Texas, which like a lot of people didn't think you were going to do. I mean, well, Zan did, but most national pundits, it was a toss up for them. So I think it's a good win. I think to get ahead of Shub in his question, yes, there is a good chance you could finish 11-1 this year. I don't know if this is a Sooner team that can completely run the table, even with the Charmin schedule, and go a complete 12-0.
Yeah, you got ahead of my point for sure there. I was just about to mention, I'll say it again. There is a loss in store for OU. I do not think all these teams are going to finish undefeated. They're just not good enough. Oklahoma is not an elite team. They're not. And just because they won Red River, I think a lot of people maybe thought they were better than they actually are. Teams are still putting up offense. I mean, Texas put up 500 yards of offense on OU's defense. It's not really as good as I feel like people think it is, and a lot of Sooner fans think it is, if I'm going to be honest. I still do think there's a loss in there, even though OU plays a very bad schedule. And we talked about this game a lot. We talked about it on win totals. We were like, how crazy would it be if UCF went in there in the Dillon Gabriel reunion and beat OU? We were like, that'd be nuts. And it kind of, that storyline kind of went away because UCF didn't do so well and Oklahoma was looking like a wagon, but it almost happened. But you know what post-game win expectancy was real quick before we move on? Because I was gonna refute Zan's point here about the refs and the officiating in this game, because I did see some little ticky-tacky calls that also went UCF's way, like the Sportsman, like when OU had UCF stopped at the goal line in the first half, UCF ended up getting a touchdown for that. But then, you know, post-game win expectancy, the robots never lie. What do you think post-game win expectancy was here?
60% UCF.
OU 72.
Post-game win expectancy suggests that the UCF Knights should have won this game 64% of the time.
Yeah, it felt like it watching it. Felt like it.
I agree. I think OU's a little lucky to win this one. A little lucky.
They were bailed out by the officials.
Yeah, I'm not going to refute that.
I thought the Big 12 mandate was to do all you can to screw over Texas and OU on the way out, not assist them.
I know. They're doing the exact opposite this week or last week.
If I'm your Mark, I'm like holding a closed officiating meeting with all my referees and being like, yo, what the hell are we doing, guys? Like, you're doing the opposite of what we wanted. But
what's the SEC paying you guys?
Anyhow, before we move on to their counterpart that's going to the SEC, Texas, let's talk about Clemson and Miami, because this was a big game in the sense that it was two big brands going at it. And basically, we talked about this game and we said the loser of this game is all but done. They're eliminated from any sort of meaningful championship, ACC, playoff, anything, any sort of championship aspirations. And Clemson lost in double overtime to a third-string, true freshman, 3-star quarterback. Yeah, let me repeat that. Clemson lost to a third-string, true freshman, 3-star quarterback for the University of Miami. Yeah. First of all, kudos to Miami, because I'm shocked that they had a 3-star that would even play quarterback. You would think a program like that would have someone better. I'm kidding. But anyways, shout out to Emory Williams, man. It's not like he did amazing, but he got it done. He beat Clemson. Shout out to Miami and Mario. They've been taking some heat, man. This is probably a really feel-good win for them. But I look at this game and I'm thinking, like, Clemson, this is a game that you probably should have won, like, on paper. And they lost. And if you go look at the ACC standings right now, Clemson is 2-3 in ACC play. They're like,
yeah, they're done.
They're like way down at the bottom. And it's just like, it's weird for me. I'm like looking at those standings. I'm like, is this basketball? Like, this is like basketball in like mid-December where they start conference play and Clemson's just like 2-3 in conference play. No, this is football, boys. It's just weird seeing Clemson not ranked and with multiple conference losses just buried down there with the Georgia Techs and the Boston Colleges and the Wake Forests of the world. Like, that's where they are right now in the standings. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
Clemson is who we thought they were. A little overrated this year. Not as good as, the market would suggest. And yeah, I mean, the ACC is more open this year than it has been in years past. And FSU is picking the perfect time to be good because Clemson, the other big dog, is down. So this is the perfect time for FSU to capitalize and make the playoffs.
Now, I will say this. Clemson's win total came in, the under 10. Both of you had the over on Clemson. So are they who the
we gave too much? As the season went on, yes, because when you take a win total, you give way too much credit, or at least Gonzo and I gave way too much credit to a Riley brother. We thought he was going to come in, he was going to fix things, he was going to fix Klubnik, but as the season went along, that clearly was not the case. And then, of course, hindsight's 2020. But once you see a few games and you see that that is not the answer to this Clemson offense, then it becomes obvious. But it wasn't obvious preseason.
A couple things. Shub, I did want to congratulate you on nailing the under on this win total. You saw through the, the Fugazi, Fugazi that Clemson was throwing at the national media. And Garrett Riley, TCU, and TCU's a bunch of frauds. You want to talk about and over that I can just throw out the window while we're at it. But no, I mean, you saw through that And I wanted to believe if a 5-star quarterback and a competent offensive coordinator, this was going to be otherworldly, partnered with Clemson's defensive line. And the reality of the situation, it's so simple. You didn't go in the transfer portal. You want guys who are going to show up the Bible at 6 p.m. sharp every Wednesday. And instead of, taking in like the Fentrell Cypresses of the world, like that, that tackle that went to USC, I could name a million. No, you chose to stay stubborn, and this is what you get. You lose to NIL University, first time they beat you since like 2005, I want to say. And it's no coincidence. Like, you should have beat Miami. Like, you do have the talent to compete with them, but they have clearly they have adapted the NIL mantra. And man, that's a good win for the Canes. I was genuinely happy to see them finally get one over Clemson. And Dabo, man, you better hope that Bama job starts coming open, because they ain't going to take 9-3 over there at little old Clemson.
Well, see, that begs the question. Remember, like 4 years ago, when everyone was talking about, like Alabama, when Saban retires, they're just going to go get Dabo Swinney, and then they're just going to be a dynasty again. Like, if you're Alabama, do you even want to hire Dabo Swinney? Because I don't think I would want to hire him. No
one wants to hire Dabo right now.
And Lanning, that's who you poach. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually would agree with that. I think Lanning is a great coach, but yeah, I agree with you on everything about this game and about Clemson. It's we are seeing the slow, steady downfall of a program that was really good, and that's normal, because that happens in college football over the years. Like, teams have their runs, for 4 or 5 years, they're really good, they're elite, and then they drop off. And I think we're just witnessing the drop off of a team that was once great in the mid to late 2010s.
And that's why Nick Saban's the greatest ever, because they've been this consistent for this long. Love them, hate them, have no opinion. That's why he's the greatest, because every single time we think that the Alabama dynasty has crumbled, they do what they're doing this year. And that's the difference. And there'll never be another one like Nick Saban.
So, not to add salt in the wound, because Miami did get this win. I'm sure Miami's happy about this win, because I think Miami desperately needed this, after what they've been gone through the last few weeks. It just makes me go back and think, like, Miami's 5-2. They have 2 ACC losses right now. If they just kneel the ball versus Georgia Tech, Miami is 6-1. They're probably ranked pretty high, and they are very much like right in the thick of the ACC championship race, because they would only have one conference loss. But because they didn't kneel the ball, yeah, and potentially the playoff too. But because they didn't kneel the ball, they are kind of sort of eliminated from ACC championship play, barring like crazy chaos. It's that's just gotta be haunting.
I don't know. I think if they win out, there's a chance. I think Louisville might lose at least one more. UNC, the way they're playing, they can lose one more. Duke, how long is Leonard out? They're probably going to lose another one. So I think Miami, if they run the table, they've got a shot.
Well, they do play at Florida State, so that definitely doesn't help. But then they got Louisville at home as well, so they do have a chance to beat Louisville head to head. So that would be one straw that you can break there. But there is a path; it's just very unlikely. All right, back into the Big 12, boys. Speaking of poor officiating that helped out the Red River boys, let's talk about Texas versus Houston. Now, this is a game that I did not think we'd be having to talk about, especially when Texas got out to a 21-0 lead, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's business as usual. And then all of a sudden I saw 21-21, and I'm like, what the hell? I was genuinely shocked. And then I started paying attention in the second half, and boys, the big talking point with this game is right there at the very end. Houston was driving with a potential chance to at least tie the game, send it to OT, deep into Texas territory in the red zone, and the refs gave Houston a pretty unfavorable spot, if you're going to ask me, that would have given them a first down, a very pivotal moment in the game. Instead, Houston ended up turning the ball over on downs. What's your takeaway from this?
Well, that was third down, and so they were forced to try to convert in fourth down, which of course they didn't, but it never should have came down to it. It was a first down. The whole ball was over the line. When you look at the replay, the whole ball went over the freaking line, and they called him short. And, I'm not going to say definitively that this would have won or lost them the game, but it would have given them a chance to win the game, or at least tie it or go for two, score and go for two and beat Texas, which we have seen teams like Kansas do in the past. So, I mean, that's crucial, man, because if Houston was able to pull that off, all of a sudden Texas is sitting there with two Big 12 losses and Quinn Ewers is out. Oh man, Texas would be on life support. They would absolutely be on life support had this outcome been different. So I don't know. Maybe the officials were looking out for the ratings for the Big 12 championship game. That's the only thing I can think of.
With Texas, from what I did watch of this game, besides the fourth quarter, there was a moment where Sark had a chance to kick to go up 17, and he runs a fake field goal, and then Texas Tech, Houston drives down the field and cuts it to 7 to end the half. And like just that kind of stuff right there, Sark. Like, why are you messing around like this, running fake field goals against Houston? Like, I get if you're up 30, but I just don't get that kind of play calling. And then you get Ewers hurt. Now, thank God you're probably top 5 in the country in regards to backup quarterbacks. Malik Murphy, man, salute to you, like keeping the season alive by just playing confident ball. As for Houston, tough loss. Like, I bet the vitriol is absolutely real between like Houston and up there in Austin. But I didn't like that play call on 4th and 1, 4th and inches. You basically ran like a rub route type concept, and dude was not open at all. And it's like, with a guy like Donovan Smith, you would have thought he could have been at least a little more versatile in the play calling there. And then I'm very curious if Dana even goes for 2. I want to believe he would have. I want to believe that is what he would have done in that situation. But I think like OU, it's just, I really do think he would have. I think it's just like OU, Texas, off a hangover, except as the loser. And I think they really believe they can kind of just roll in there and still win by like 2 touchdowns. And, Houston, kudos to them. They fought hard, and if things fall right, they can still make that bowl game maybe. Like I know Zan's rooting for.
I just need 5. I don't even need a bowl game. Give me
Not
5.
even. Yep.
Well, a couple things about Houston real quick. One, I actually didn't mind the play call because Houston couldn't run worth a lick in this game. They only ran for 14 rushing yards. And Donovan Smith, I mean, the guy was open. Donovan Smith just didn't hit the pass. He couldn't execute. But I don't want that to take away. Donovan Smith has played very well the last few weeks. Like Houston as a whole, like we just mentioned, they've been playing better the last few weeks. It just hasn't really shown that much in the win-loss column. So shout out to them. But on the Texas side here, boys, the big storyline with this for Texas moving forward is Quinn Ewers. He was taken out of this game, and he now is announced to be out for about 4 weeks with an AC joint sprain. What does this mean for Texas now? Because if you look at their schedule, the Big 12 is down this year, but I look at their schedule, there's these next 4 weeks, and I see 1, maybe 2 potential slip-up opportunities. Did we see enough from Malik Murphy in this game? Because Malik Murphy only threw 2 passes, completed 1 of them. He didn't run the ball.
Well, what are your 1 or 2 potential slip-ups, Shub? You kept us on a cliffhanger there.
Well, I see a Kansas State team that seems to be on the up and up the last few weeks, that seems to be playing a lot better like we would have expected them to throughout the season. They may be catching a Kansas State team that is playing their best ball at the worst time if you're Texas. Though, granted, it is in Austin. And if there's one team, listen, there's all these Big 12 schools that have had like Texas's number over the last decade, like Oklahoma State and TCU that just own Texas. Kansas State has been, for whatever reason, not one of those teams that's owned Texas. Texas has still been able to beat Kansas State for whatever reason. So historically, Kansas State can't get over that hump. But I think that's a potential slip up. I think if Malik Murphy is absolute dog water, they could be in trouble against BYU or at TCU or at Iowa State, though unlikely. But, I think Kansas State in particular, I'm actually like kind of worried about that for Texas now.
Did Iowa State almost beat them last year?
Yes.
We'll see, man. Iowa State's only got 1 conference loss, so they might be a little more formidable than we thought.
Listen, it really just depends on how Malik Murphy is at the end of the day. Like, because if they get Quinn Ewers level play from Malik Murphy, then this is not really a topic. This is Texas is probably going to win out the rest of the season. But
Do you think we see Ark? If Malik
uh,
Murphy plays bad enough, you think we see some Ark Manning?
that's going to be a great question. I think Malik Murphy is going to have to be a disaster if Texas is going to have to make that move.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't know, listen. All I'm going to say, if you're Kansas State and you see Arch Manning trotting out there against you, I think you're probably feeling really good about your chances to actually beat Texas and ruin their Big 12, what should be a Big 12 championship run. Point is, we may be falling back into the Texas good old narrative of them underachieving in the Big 12. That would be something, but we'll see. Just don't know if we've seen enough from Malik Murphy to say whether or not he's actually good. The hype about him is real. The offseason hype for Malik Murphy was real, but is it actually a thing? I guess we'll find out. All right. Now, there's a huge elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, boys. There's a huge elephant in the room. UNC. What the hell? What the absolute hell? They lost to Virginia. Not Virginia Tech. Not James Madison. Virginia. At home. What the hell?
I think it's the worst loss of the year. For any
Yeah,
team.
I legitimately, I'm of the mindset that UNC legit went, oh, UNC's on, or Virginia's on the schedule. They're so bad. Who do we play next week? Let's game plan for them. And, and then of course, if you don't game plan for someone, you see what happens there. Yeah, Oklahoma State, South Bama. but yeah.
It's just classic UNC. I mean, honestly, they're kind of a Clemsoning too. Like anytime that they get any kind of hype, relevant, this is what happens. And I mean, like you alluded to, Shub, like I would even understand if it was Virginia Tech, but this is probably like the only team in this league, really, and maybe even the country, like where it's just inexcusable to lose. That just sucks. My condolences and heart goes out to any Tar Heel fans right now. I mean, that spoils what really was feeling like a special season for them.
Listen, I'm
Even
only mad.
Make the ACC title game.
Oh yeah, they definitely can. It's just I'm still mad because like I have been. This is basically why I was very anti UNC during win totals, because I didn't believe in the coaching staff. I thought the coaching staff, they're kind of notorious for this kind of stuff. And look what happened. You lose to Virginia at home. This is a complete disaster. And I'm just mad because last week on the pod, I finally gave in and was like, okay, I think UNC is actually legit. Like, I'm going to take them seriously as a legitimate ACC title contender and potential fringe playoff contender. And then they do this. And I'm just like, bro, you've got to be kidding me. Like,
I think UNC, I think all these teams just listen to the pod and they go, what did Shub say this week? Let's not do that.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is a fat blemish, boys. This has got to be the worst loss that I can think of off the top of my head for like an actual like contending team. And
absolutely,
like
they lost to a team that almost lost to William and Mary. So
was there an outcome like this last year where a team like that's in like playoff contention like lost to like
a
one
team
of the
like
worst?
that? No.
Like I can't think of the last time something like this happened.
I mean, this is like Vandy beating like LSU or something.
Yeah,
like
this is legit, like around that. Yeah,
like when LSU is being taken as a serious like playoff contender.
This is like the equivalent of Stanford beating Oregon.
Yes,
that's a good one actually.
Seen. But yeah, I mean,
yeah. All right, enough said. But yeah, man, I'm a little worried about your win total now. But we'll see. Virginia is bad.
I am too.
Virginia is bad, but
damn you, UVA.
If Virginia can somehow still cash in the under for you with and still beat UNC,
hey, I still have two wins. I still have 2 wins left.
That's pretty hilarious though. The fact that they might still go under despite beating UNC in Chapel Hill.
Just need them to get to Tech with 2 wins still, and then
then it'll be good. Yeah,
but. Good Lord, man. This is why Miami is still in the ACC championship picture because of this.
Remember, Miami took this team. Miami went to four overtimes with this team last year.
Man, absolutely insane. This is why the ACC is actually getting really interesting now. I think it's going to be a fun race to the end to see who plays Florida State in the championship game. So let's go to the Big Ten because you want to talk about interesting races within a conference. The Big Ten West. We talked a lot about Iowa in the last pod, and we got to give a shout out to the Minnesota-Iowa game. Oh, man, Iowa. You lost 12-10 to Minnesota, and Minnesota did not get into the end zone once. They kicked 4 field goals. Iowa did some Iowa stuff,
Amazing.
and Iowa had a punt return touchdown with a minute left get called back because of an illegal fair catch signal. You guys all saw that clip. I'm sure if you're watching this, if you're an Iowa fan, I'm sure you're not happy about that. And listen, I get it, but what do you guys think? Was that the right call or no?
I don't think any Iowa fan's going to tell you that was the right call, but it's just so interesting to see a game end like that. You think Iowa is going to escape, with this punt return, this miraculous punt return. You think they're going to pull something Iowa. That is the most Iowa thing to do. Get a pick six, get a punt return, get a safety, get something to win the game that isn't by way of your offense. The most Iowa thing ever. And this time it doesn't come through for you. Maybe the officials were just kind of like, you know what, bro? You can't get away with this again. You can't keep getting away with this. Flag. But anyway, man, I mean, Iowa is lucky to be in the position that they're in. They're probably still going to be the representative from the Big Ten West. And they're going to get smoked by whoever comes out of the East. And that's just a product of them not knowing how to play offense.
Well, I don't know if they're going to win the Big Ten West now. It's kind of up in the air because Wisconsin got that huge win versus Illinois at the buzzer.
Wisconsin plays Ohio State this week.
They do, but theoretically, if Wisconsin wins out while still losing to Ohio State, and then Wisconsin trips up against one of these Big Ten West teams, Wisconsin can still get to the Big Ten championship game. Like it's not like as clear Iowa's in the driver's seat as it was last week now. But yeah, anyways, though, I will say this. If you're an Iowa fan,
Wisco's going to get that extra Big Ten loss.
The biggest argument I've seen from Iowa fans is that they think that the refs sort of played the result, as in the refs didn't make the call to signal it at an illegal fair catch signal until they saw the touchdown happen. And then they were like, oh, okay, like now we'll throw the flag. But in a normal situation, if the player made that, illegal fair catch signal and then it just ended up being like a 2-yard gain on the punt return, the rest would have been like, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's what Iowa fans
I think it comes back to like he did wave his hand for a fair catch, and ultimately they didn't see it at first, but when they went back, they changed it to the right call. So I can understand the frustration from an Iowa fan, but he did wave his hand. If he had not waved his hand, I'd be 100% with you that there's something fishy there.
Well, he was waving his hand to tell his players to like move away from the ball, but of course, just like
concerning signals.
Yes, exactly. Like it
looks like a fair catch. It looked like a fair catch wave to me, but
no, whatever. Well, regardless, even if he was trying to tell his players to move away from the ball, that's still like you can't. That's football 101. You can't do that when you're the punt returner because the refs will think that's a fair catch signal.
The refs and the defense coming at you will think you're giving up.
Yeah.
I think when you play with black magic for too long, eventually a spell is going to backfire. This team has had so much of this voodoo magic happen, and I'm not saying it's deserved, but I'm saying it was only a matter of time before the magic, and I still think there's more magic, don't get me wrong, but before this week's rendition of the magic finally ran out. Minnesota played them tough last year, I'm fairly certain, out over there in Kinnick, and Minnesota by no means is really that good, but they were able to out Iowa somehow.
They did. I mean, like, the magic will always be there, man. Like, their defensive coordinator is a level 100 black necromancer. Like, he is gonna like always bring the voodoo. Like, you cannot stop this man.
Shout out to Deacon Hill. He reached 100 passing yards, guys. Shout out Deacon incredible. Hill. Let's go, baby. 100 passing yards. And also shout out to Ethan Kaliakmanis from Minnesota. He didn't throw an interception. I thought it was like a guaranteed, like a lock that man was going to throw at least like 2 interceptions in this game.
Against Iowa, yeah.
I thought the fact that Ethan did not throw an interception in this game is an absolute miracle. And I think Minnesota probably told him, like, bro, like even if we're just throwing like 3-yard screens the entire game, just whatever you do, don't throw an interception. That's probably what the game plan was. And he didn't. So congratulations, man. You didn't get Iowa by Iowa, and Minnesota won. All right. Washington versus ASU. We'll cover this one briefly because I was able to watch this one. Washington did not look right. They were struggling against Arizona State. And again, I don't want to take a victory lap, but I did take ASU first half spread because I did think there was going to be a hangover element for Washington. I totally did not think it would be this bad. Like, I did not think that Arizona State was legitimately have a chance to actually win the damn game in Seattle towards the very end there. But then, Washington did. Listen, we're Washington pod, but let's be honest here. There was a very critical pass or a non-holding call that should have been called that was like egregious that went in Washington's favor. And then on top of that, I mean, Arizona State and Trenton Bourguet, you just threw a pick six to basically give Washington the game there at the end. When if this was a team that we hated getting away with a win like this, we'd be saying like this team got lucky and we'd be saying like they got bailed out by the refs and got really lucky. That's kind of what happened to Washington. They got bailed out by the refs, and they got very lucky to win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, down game. And when you look at it, I mean, Michael Penix struggled. And this is the second game where Michael Penix, I guess, arguably struggled. Did he have a touchdown pass in this game?
I don't know. The offense, I don't think the offense.
This would be the second game. This would be the second game where Michael Penix has not thrown a touchdown. And for someone in the Heisman race, that's usually not a very good sign.
No, I mean, two things. Sorry, Shoot.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
One, they can pump the brakes on the 2019 LSU comparisons now, just because you have a very good quarterback and 2 NFL wide receivers. Hell, I mean, they got an NFL quarterback. Just because you have all that does not make you Joe Burrow and LSU, so they can pump the brakes on that. Second, you gotta love the books. They got to be laughing so hard. All that money that got pumped into Penix as the front runner for Heisman. Then he goes and does this, and they're just like Birdman hand rubbing. Thank you very much.
But then again, who's going to win the Heisman? Who's the clear front runner right now? Is it Caleb? I know Caleb, like, he played better, but he still didn't play great. It's between Penix, Caleb Williams. Jayden Daniels is playing well. Maybe he can backdoor his way back into the conversation. But right now, it's not a clear cut. It's not clear cut who's going to win the freaking Heisman at all.
It's going to sound so biased, so I apologize. But look, Jayden's making a very good case for himself. I mean, yeah, it's Army, but he played well against Army. The offense has generated over 500 yards in 7 consecutive games. Unfortunately, those 2 bad losses to FSU and Ole Miss are what ding him. But in terms of what he is doing on his side of the ball, he's been fantastic. I saw them comparing him to Joe Burrow from a pace and numbers perspective last night. So I think if we get this kind of wacky year where all the front runners continue just be mid, and if LSU can at least, like you said offline, either get to Atlanta at 10-2 or at the worst 9-3, that would give him a very good shot, because again, we've just seen so many of these front runner types just not have good games, which is very strange in a college football season.
If Jayden Daniels can get LSU to Atlanta and continues to play well, I think he has a very legitimate shot to win the Heisman. Shub, at this current junction, based on what you've seen, if you had to take, you were gun to your head, you're forced to take a flyer for the Heisman winner, who would you take at this moment in time?
Well, if I had to take a flyer for betting purposes strategically, or just who I think is going to end up winning it with no money.
Who's going to win it? Who's going to win it?
I legitimately, I hate to give this answer, but I legitimately don't know. I legitimately don't know, because I see a path for all these players to potentially win it, but it's so dependent on how your team does and how your national perception
absolutely, Shu. But that's why I posed the question and I prefaced it with, there's a gun to your head, make a pick.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to sit here for 10 minutes and think about it, because I legitimately don't know. I mean, listen, the odds right now,
I don't think the hostage taker is gonna like that, but
if I had a gun to my head, then I'd be dead, because I legitimately can't think. I don't think there is anybody that I think in my mind like, oh yeah, they are going to win the Heisman right now. The front runner is JJ McCarthy. Like, do you guys realize that JJ McCarthy right now is the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman on the sports books? JJ McCarthy. So that's
JJ
why
McCarthy
I'm dead.
wins, that is an absolute travesty.
Well, guess what, man? They're number
travesty.
one. He's the odds-on leader on DraftKings right now. Like, that's why I said I'd be dead if someone put a gun to my head, because right now it's JJ McCarthy according to sports books.
Like, if he wins, like, that just shows that, like, all you have to do is play a bunch of community colleges with like a 5-star roster, and then you'll be the Heisman.
But listen, if you want my advice as someone that covers college football, is like, whatever you do not bet on JJ McCarthy, because what if he like craps the bed versus Penn State and Ohio State, which is like the only 2 games that people are going to care about that Michigan plays. All of a sudden, that's like becomes a terrible bet. This is why, like, I legitimately don't know who's going to win. For all I know,
it's
Carson
not
Beck
going to be
can
McCarthy.
win.
There's no way.
It could be Carson Beck for all we know. Carson Beck's like 35-1 right now. But if Georgia's like the only team that's undefeated at the end of the year, and Carson Beck just has good stats, which he does, and everyone else is losing games, it could be Carson Beck. Like,
if he didn't get hurt, that Travis Hunter hype would be just beyond the roof right now.
Oh, I would protest if Travis Hunter won it.
No, I'm not saying that's it's deserved, but I'm saying the whole, he plays 2 sides of the ball, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, Moss catches, an interception. For writers who don't watch the games, who look at score, box scores and stats, oh my gosh, like, and with the Deion hype, he'd be in New York.
Do you think, and this is me, a little Homer Hope, that's what I like to call this, Homer Hope.
Ollie?
If Ollie Gordon continues his dominance and just finishes with 100 yards plus in every game the rest of the season with the tutty, you think he's got a shot, especially if everyone continues to struggle? Ollie Gordon, the first 3 games of the season, only had like 10 total carries, and he's already at like 800 yards. It's crazy.
Ollie Gordon's in the mix now on DraftKings. He's in the same realm as Blake Corum, DJU, Kyle McCord, Jalen Milroe, Sam Hartman, Roma Dunze. That's the neighborhood that Ollie's in.
I think if Ahmad Williams for Boston College can be a dark horse, I absolutely believe Ollie Gordon can.
Fair point.
That's so much.
Yeah. Listen, I wanted to give you an answer to that question, Zan, but then I went on DraftKings and saw JJ McCarthy is the betting leader right now. And I'm like, yeah, I can't give an answer based on what I've seen. Like, I legitimately can't.
That's fair enough, Shu. Well, let's go ahead and move on.
Which is telling. So, a couple things. Since we're on the topic of Michigan, let's go ahead and talk about Michigan. This news has sort of been a thing going on. It seems like Jim Harbaugh v. the NCAA has sort of been like a battle that's been going on all off season. Now it's trickled in the season. Now Michigan is being investigated by the NCAA for sending people to opposing teams' practices to sort of study what their hand signals are and their plays or whatnot. And there have been coaches that have accused Michigan of sign stealing. And basically some coaches have said, hey, there's something fishy going on. And now they're being investigated by the NCAA. But of course, we all know that the NCAA is sort of in a feud right now with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. So the question is, 1, do you think this is a warranted investigation? And 2, even if it's warranted, do you think this is like the NCAA like taking personal matters into just a grudge they got going on versus Harbaugh?
NCAA has no shortage of things that I would put past them. Honestly, it could be a grudge against Harbaugh. I mean, me as an Oklahoma State fan, the NCAA penalizes my program, but not everyone else who had way more egregious basketball offenses. We'll leave it at that. And, a bunch of other stuff with Des Bryant and yada, yada. I can go on forever. But anyway, they pick and choose. The NCAA picks and chooses who they're going to enforce on. And if they don't like you, which they clearly don't like Jim Harbaugh, they're going to try to find any way to come about you. So I think maybe there's legitimacy, but is it hyper inflated by the NCAA to try to like bring pressure on the program? Probably.
I think it's kind of a witch hunt. And I heard a rumor that Michigan State, considered not playing Michigan this week due to this. Please, it's because they did exactly what we thought they'd do to you and beat the crap out of you in East Lansing. No, they knew they had no talent, so they're like, yeah, it's so unethical of our arch rival, stealing signs. Like we've alluded earlier in the pod and all season, none of Michigan's opponents have indicated that stealing their signs would really change the outcome. I mean, in fact, it makes me believe that they didn't, because if Michigan had stole the signs, they would have won these games by 70. So I think it's kind of a witch hunt. And I think there's much bigger things the NCAA should worry about. Like, I don't know, like regulating NIL, but what do I know?
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, if you're Michigan and you actually are like going this far to steal opposing team signs against this schedule, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need to steal signs to beat Rutgers.
We
and
need
Indiana.
to know what Rutgers is doing.
Yeah, we really got to know. We got to send our guys to Indiana to see what the Hoosiers are doing, because yeah, we feel very threatened by them. No, listen, with all things witch hunts, even if against teams that I don't like or fan bases that I don't like, with these witch hunts, I think the NCAA is just being fools for themselves again.
Facetious.
Yes, listen, every team, even everybody thinks that their team's all righteous and stuff, and when your team that you hate or your rival gets caught for doing something like this, you're like, oh yeah, they were cheating, I knew it. Well, listen, the fact of the matter is, like, this is just gamesmanship throughout all of sports. Like in baseball, stealing signs is totally a thing. The Astros took it a step further with the whole, buzzer and stuff. But like, even before the Astros did that, like, teams would still steal signs. Like, whenever there's a runner on second base, sometimes the guy would read what the catcher's pointing on his fingers, and he would make signals to the batter and say, hey, he's throwing this pitch. Like, that's fair game as far as I know. Same thing with football. Sometimes if you pick up on something, or a team's being very lackadaisical, or you pick up a pattern with their signs and you think you know what they're calling, like, of course you're going to use that. That's just regular gamesmanship. I think that the difference here is that Michigan probably took it a step too far, which I'm sure they do. The Patriots did, the Astros did, Michigan does. Like, all the great teams, like, definitely try to take it a step further, but that doesn't mean that other teams aren't trying to do that as well. And I just think that this is just a load of hoopla. But
well said.
It is kind of funny though that I think it is kind of the NCAA just doing this because they're pissed off at Harbaugh. That's what I really think this is for, which is really funny to me. But anyhow, we've talked enough about how
probably so. I wouldn't put it past them at all.
But yeah, but if this is true though, I just got to say, why you don't need to do this, Michigan. Like, come on. Like, that's the thing. It's like, you don't need to do this against that schedule.
That would be the worst way to get their wins vacated.
Dude, seriously though, that's why I'm kind of like, all right, like, if they were doing this against like Rutgers and Indiana and Bowling Green, then like, you got a problem. So anyways, another quick tidbit here before we move on to our little awards, which those are back, by the way, for those of you OG listeners of the pod. Real quick, Arkansas let go of OC Dan Enos. Been a rough times in Fayetteville so far this year. Gonzo, what's your take on this?
My take is as follows. I'm curious what's next for Sam Pittman. I mean, he made this hire. You couldn't control losing, Kendall Briles, but the fact is, you took a quarterback like KJ Jefferson, who was top the upper tier in the SEC, and you've just neutralized them. I mean, yeah, they put up 30 on LSU, but I mean, anybody can do that. So they I think it's a predecessor of things to come, and I really do like Sam Pittman, and I don't know who Arkansas would even get, because I think your ceiling at Arkansas is 9 wins on a good day in a good year. So I'm curious who's going to call plays there, who's established, who they think will add anything, especially I'm pretty sure this is KJ's last year. So I think Arkansas is in for some rough times, and I wouldn't be surprised if the coaching carousel is calling for them this offseason.
It's just the amount of talent that's on that the Razorbacks offense, from the offensive line, quarterback. I mean, I expected more. Back, Raheem Sanders, I expected more from them this year. I expected so much more. And I thought they could win at least 7. I had them on the over, and I feel stupid for that. But you know what?
Same.
I think you're right, Gonzo. I think it's tough times ahead for the Razorbacks because realistically, who are you going to get? And if you fire Sam Pittman and start a rebuild, who are you going to get? You better go out there
And
and get Mike Elko or Lance Leipold, but like then you have like a hope. But other than that, like there's not a lot of options for you.
and your old exes are coming back into town with Oklahoma and Texas. And yeah, they beat Texas last year. Whoop-de-doo. That's nifty. But I don't think this future version of Arkansas is going to be any version of OU and Texas that comes in the SEC.
Yeah,
Well
I mean,
said.
numbers don't lie though. Arkansas last year, 24th best offense. This year, 70th. So it has been a big dip. But yeah, tough times in Fayetteville. Well, boys, it's time to go back to one of our OG segments. And we've sort of been giving out Shooby Snacks, Sandy Bars, and Gonzo Grudges throughout our podcast. But, you know, we decided to go back to our format last year. We sort of give these more attention, more credence that they deserve at the end of the show here. So for those of you who don't know, who are just listening, Shooby Snacks, those were awarded to players that did something good, players, teams, or coaches that did something good that we acknowledge. And then a Zanny Bar is given out to a player, coach, or team or fan base that did something very bad, that did something that we don't like. And then a Gonzo Grudge is just a Gonzo Grudge. It's self-explanatory. It is something that Gonzo was not very happy with, and we all know Gonzo, he likes to hold his grudges. And there's no shortage of those in college football, especially on the betting front and with his picks with ZKS. So let's start out here with Shooby Snacks. We'll go in order here. We each have 3, I believe, or Gonzo, you may have less. I'm not sure. But anyways, Shooby Snack is going to go out to Oklahoma State running back Ollie Gordon for his performance last week versus West Virginia, and really his performance the last few weeks when the Oklahoma State coaching staff finally decided, like, hey, we kind of have a good player on our hands. Let's start playing him more. Against West Virginia, 29 carries, 282 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, like insane. And he averaged nearly 10 yards per carry. And I don't know if you've checked Zan yet, but he probably won you the player draft for this week because Zan took him in the player draft. So that probably single-handedly won him the player draft for this past week. So that deserves a Shooby Snack. Ollie Gordon's got an NFL future, boys. And he's really helping propel this Oklahoma State team to a 5-2, a very quiet 5-2 record after a complete disaster start in non-conference play. Next up, Utah gets a Shooby Snack for me for beating USC and frankly just kind of owning USC. Utah really, every single year, we talked about this earlier on the pod. We talk about all these Pac-12 contenders. We talk about the teams like USC and the Oregons, the Washingtons, the more flashy teams, and we just sort of forget about Utah. They always seem to take a loss there or two towards the beginning of the season, and then Utah just slowly creeps up from behind. They beat these good teams that everyone else talks about, and Utah, with their defense and physical style of football, just always seems to backdoor their way into these Pac-12 championship games and win Pac-12 championships and go to the Rose Bowl. And frankly, I think that's still a possibility this year. With all the great teams in the Pac-12 at the top this year, this is a team that can for sure backdoor their way into the Pac-12 championship game somehow, even without Cam Rising or Brent Keithy. I don't know how they do it, but they do it because they're a phenomenal program, and Kyle Whittingham is one of the best coaches in the country. So they get a Shooby Snack just for owning USC and really putting a damper on the Lincoln Riley era so far there in Southern Cal. So
even with their tough schedule, man, they're still going to go over 8.5. Credit to Utah.
And win totals too. Yeah, that's a whole Utah's never fails there on that front. Lastly, Shooby Snack. We didn't really talk about them today, but I got to give a Shooby Snack to Missouri because I just feel like they are a team that is quietly having a phenomenal season. Missouri is now 7-1. 7-1 Missouri Tigers. They, of course, have been ranked the last few weeks. We were kind of over this. We all kind of like this team. We were all over on their win total at 6.5, which, by the way, shout out to the Missouri over 6.5 wins. Cash in the bank for your 3 of us right here. Let's go.
Actual money, baby.
And I want to give a Shooby Snack to them for just being a solid team this year, being even a little bit better than I think we thought. I think we were high on them. I don't think we thought they'd start out 7-1. and be like legitimate like SEC East contenders, potentially fringe contenders. But yeah, everything for Missouri is still in front of them. They still have to play Georgia. They still have to play Tennessee. But if you win one of those two games, they can at the very least finish second in the SEC East, which is a phenomenal season for Missouri standards. And it's just a team that's having a really good season right now that's just not being talked about because they're not a huge brand. And I think they deserve that recognition. So shout out to the Missouri Tigers and shout out to their fans that really hated us last year. And now they're going to love us because I did this little Shooby Snack segment on them. Well, I don't know. They might still hate us, but hey, things change year over year. And this year we're Missouri Pod. So shout out to the Missouri Tigers, the third and final Shooby Snack of week 8.
Very solid team. Very solid team. Well, let's dive into the negative of college football around the horn this week, and that's with Zanny Bars. And my first Zanny Bar goes to Big 12 officiating. The two Red River duo. Texas wins their game because Houston gets a very questionable spot. And yes, Houston did have a chance to convert on 4th down, and they did not do so, but man, they should have never been in that situation. So I'm not going to say that Texas would have lost, but the Big 12 refs certainly hindered Houston's ability to have a chance at the end to maybe score and go for 2 and potentially win it. UCF OU. I have a real bone to pick with this one, especially with the refs. Right before halftime, OU is in field goal range. Dylan Gabriel throws an interception, and the refs pull out the little yellow hanky, throw it, and they call pass interference on a play that was clearly not pass interference at all. The pass interference erases the interception and gives OU a field goal right before the half. Guess what? OU won by 2 points. Refs won OU the game. I have a bone to pick with that. The two teams that don't really need any help from the officials got all the help from the officials. Come on, Big 12. You're not supposed to do that. All right. Second Zanny Bar for this week, and it's kind of a recurring theme. If you are a member of this team, of this organization, you should know that you have a Zanny Bar coming every week. Iowa. Zanny Bar for Iowa. Come on, guys. 12-10 loss, and you had to rely on potentially pulling some magical Iowa voodoo, as we call it here on the Saturday Scholars Pod, to win the game. And finally, the voodoo doesn't work, although we thought you had it there at the end until the refs said he waved fair catch and called back the touchdown. Sorry if that brings back some sore memories, Iowa fans. But but hey, still in a good position to go to represent the Big Ten West in the championship game. But ultimately, Ferentz, that experiment has failed mightily. Find a real OC this offseason. Huge Zanny Bar. Iowa, look, you guys are great for content. You guys are great for crapping on. Your defense is always amazing. Your defensive coordinator is a level 100 black necromancer, and that's why you guys always pull all these turnovers and somehow win with your offense, averaging 10 yards a game. It's amazing. Quite frankly, imagine if you guys had a semi-competent offense. But with that being said, Zanny Bar for Iowa yet again because their offense is incompetent.
And Zanny Bar is the by far and away the Zanny Bar leader on the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast.
They get one almost every week. It's crazy.
Last year they racked up a lot. This year they're getting a handful too.
They are. I can't see the doc. What's my other one? I forgot.
UNC.
And my last Zanny Bar goes to North Carolina. And this is almost like a grudge for me too. This is almost a grudge for me because I have personal money on the University of Virginia under 3.5. It was looking like absolute money. And then North Carolina, undefeated at home, goes off and loses a stinker to the worst team in the ACC in the Virginia Cavaliers. I mean, Tony Elliott was a dead man walking, literally with the noose around his neck, and he finds a way to Houdini himself out of that and beat North Carolina. What is going on? What is going on? I'll say it again. What is going on? Zanny Bar, North Carolina. How do you lose? And this is going to cost you. Now you are out of the running for potential playoff berth. Now you may not make the ACC championship game because you still have some games on your schedule that require you to play at your best, and you just lost one of your freebies. You just shot yourself in the foot, maybe the face. Zanzibar, North Carolina.
That's got to be the worst loss this year by a title contender easily, like not even close. Virginia is one of the worst teams in the entire Power 5, if not the worst team in the Power 5. Just inexcusable. Inexcusable. Yeah, that's tough, man. That's tough.
So for Gonzo grudges, there's varying degrees. There's some where I laugh and I'm like, oh man, that sucks, but that is kind of funny. But it still hurts my picks, hurts my record, so it's frustrating. There's others like this first one that are infuriating. Pittsburgh's playing Wake Forest in a game nobody cares about, and Pittsburgh gets a pick to stall the Wake drive, and they gotta get one first down. Wake's got all their timeouts. 3rd and whatever, they call a run play of Christian Villou. I think it's Villou, the backup transfer from Penn State, because Jurkovec can't play quarterback, even though, other people want to tell us that Pitt's legit and Jurkovec's half decent. He slides. Game's over. I'm ecstatic. Another pick in the book. These absolute just jerks from the officiating office rule him down somehow short. And it's 4th and 1. Pitt punts, Wake scores with like no time left and wins. And so I got a huge grudge against just the ACC officiating crew. How can you not even at least review where Villou slide and make a determination based off of that? You cost me a pick because of that lazy officiating. This next one, I'm piggybacking off of Zan, UNC. I wasn't too mad about it, but I got them winning 9 games, and I got Virginia under 3.5. So it's like, do your job. You have Drake May. Oh my! I get it was Mitch Trubisky. You got Drake May. Just win the game by 30. Like, they're not good. Virginia is terrible. They're out here trailing the FCS teams. They lost to, was it Marshall or James Madison? One of those. I think it was Marshall. Like, pitiful. Just pathetic. And then Arkansas. You scored 3 points against Miss State, who's the worst team in the SEC West. I mean, are you kidding me right now? If all of these had hit, I would have at least had 40 correct picks for this week. So that's frustrating, but the biggest grudge by far is against just the absolute trash officiating within the ACC. I guess them and the Big 12 had some coffee beforehand to talk about how they were going to really pull some screw jobs over on a couple of teams today.
You gotta love it, man. Gotta love it, man. When we're Pitt, Wake Forest spreads and picks. Those are that was a weird win for them for sure. That was one that kind of surprised me if you pay attention deep enough into the bottom of the Power 5. All right, gentlemen. Do we want to take a break before we do predictions real quick, or do we just want to knock it out?
I think knock it out.
Knock it out. Let's get Alex to bed.
All right.
Get us all to bed.
All right. So I'm going to cut that, but I'm going to do the outro and intro, since these are going to be 2 separate things. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Another long pod here, bit of change of format. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think about these games, about these teams, about anything that we've said so far. Leave comments on the videos if you're watching or listening on the YouTube podcast platform. Let us know what you guys think. We are no longer going to be on Apple from here on out for the rest of the season, so we are exclusively YouTube. So that being said, this is Gonzo, Zan, and Shub, the Saturday Scholars, signing out. See y'all later. Have a great weekend and enjoy your college football Saturday.